You ever sit across from someone you love, with the smell of cinnamon pancakes and fresh coffee lingering in the air, and suddenly realize you don't know them anymore? That was me last Sunday. We were at our favorite little brunch spot, the Willow Leaf, this cozy place with mismatched mugs and handwritten menus. Emily loved it because they served her almond milk chai in those massive pottery bowls that looked like they belonged in an art museum. She smiled at me across the table, the kind of smile that felt rehearsed. Her eyes didn't crinkle like they used to. "I think we should take a break," she said, casually slicing into her pancake like she'd just asked for the check. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "A break?" Emily nodded, not even looking up. "Yeah, just some space. I need to figure things out." I blinked, my appetite vanishing in an instant. We'd been together for almost 8 years. Married for 3. This wasn't just, let's cool off after a fight territory. This was something deeper. Something colder. Figure out what, exactly? She finally looked up. Her eyes were serious, maybe a little scared, but calm. Too calm. "I don't know. I feel stuck. Trapped. Like I'm living someone else's idea of happiness. I love you, Jake. I really do. But I need to find out who I am. Alone." I felt like I was falling in slow motion. "So what? You want to separate? Just like that?" "I don't know if it's permanent. I just need time. To breathe. To explore." The word explore landed in my stomach like a lead weight. I didn't have to ask what she meant by that. I could see it in her face. The subtle way her lips trembled when she said it. The faint trace of guilt in her voice. I wanted to scream, to ask her if she'd met someone. But something held me back. Pride, maybe. Or fear of hearing the truth. Instead, I nodded slowly, numbly. "How long?" "I don't know. A few weeks? Maybe a month." She reached across the table, her fingers grazing mine, soft and uncertain. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I can't keep pretending everything's okay." I pulled my hand away, not out of anger, but because it hurt too damn much to let her touch me like that, like I was a memory she didn't want to say goodbye to just yet. The drive home was silent. She packed a bag with the efficiency of someone who had rehearsed this in her mind 100 times. I watched her, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, heart thudding like a hammer in my chest. She didn't cry. She kissed me on the cheek, said, "Please don't hate me," and walked out. And just like that, she was gone. The apartment felt hollow without her. Even her scent, lavender and sandalwood, lingered on the sheets, cruelly reminding me of what I'd lost. I walked through the rooms like a ghost, stopping at random to touch the things she'd left behind. Her favorite mug, the scarf she always forgot to hang up, the post-it note on the fridge that read, "Buy almond milk." I couldn't bring myself to erase it. I tried calling her the next day. No answer. Not even a text. She was serious about space, apparently. I respected it, or at least pretended to. I buried myself in work, picked up extra shifts, skipped lunch just to keep my mind occupied. But nights were the worst. I'd lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was sleeping alone or if she was with someone else. The not knowing was worse than the truth. One night, I found myself scrolling through our old photos. Vacations, birthdays, silly selfies at 2 in the morning. In all of them, she looked happy. Or maybe I just wanted her to be. I kept asking myself, when did she start slipping away? And worse, how did I not see it? By the end of that first week, I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. Not because I didn't want to hear from her, but because I was starting to accept that I wouldn't. A part of me hoped she'd walk back through that door and say she'd made a mistake, that she missed me, that she still wanted us. But hope is a dangerous thing when it's not shared. It keeps you chained to something that might never come back. And so I waited, in that quiet, heart-aching limbo, for something, anything, to make the silence bearable. Little did I know, the silence would soon be broken by someone I never expected. The apartment didn't just feel empty. It felt haunted, not in the cold wind and creaking doors kind of way, but with memories, quiet, intimate ones that lingered like perfume in the air long after she was gone. Her toothbrush still sat in the holder beside mine. Her slippers were by the couch, slightly askew like she had just kicked them off before curling up to watch some crime documentary. Every room carried the ghost of her, and each room silently asked the same question: why wasn't I enough? I stopped going into the bedroom. I'd made up the couch with a spare blanket and a pillow that barely held a scent of her anymore. The bed still held an indentation from her side, and looking at it made my chest feel like it was caving in. I deleted our text thread one night, just swiped it away with a trembling thumb. I had read it too many times already, searching for signs, for codes I might have missed. There were none. She had been kind, loving, distant only in hindsight. It was maddening how blind I'd been. I started skipping hangouts with friends. Every mutual contact was a potential reminder of her. I didn't want to answer their questions, didn't want to hear the pity in their voices. So, I worked. I stayed late at the office, took projects I normally would have avoided. My apartment became nothing more than a stopover between exhaustion and more distraction. It was a Wednesday when Rachel showed up. I'd just gotten home, rain-soaked, my coat clinging to me like a second skin. The elevator was broken again, so I'd hauled myself up 5 flights of stairs only to find Rachel standing outside the door, her arms folded, her eyes flickering with something between sympathy and determination. "Hey," she said softly. I texted. "Figured you weren't answering." I fumbled for my keys, too surprised to speak. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" "Emily asked me to pick up some of her stuff. She said you'd be home late." But she trailed off, glancing at the wet strands of hair stuck to my forehead. "Clearly she forgot you don't like being predictable." I let out a weak chuckle, unlocking the door. "Come in. It's a mess." She stepped in cautiously, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She hadn't changed much. Still had that confident posture, the high cheekbones, the cool, almost unapproachable beauty that had always made her look like she walked out of a magazine. Rachel had been Emily's best friend since college, loud, smart, loyal. I always thought she was a little intimidating, but we'd gotten along well enough. I motioned toward the bedroom. Her stuff's in the closet. Top shelf. A suitcase and some winter clothes. She nodded but didn't move. Instead, her eyes scanned the apartment, pausing on the coffee table, the dim lamp by the couch, the stack of unopened mail. "This place feels weird without her," she said. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, tell me about it." She turned to me then, and there was something in her expression I couldn't quite place, something more than sympathy. Something warmer. "I didn't agree with what she did," Rachel said quietly. "The whole finding herself thing. I told her so." I raised an eyebrow. "You did?" "Of course. She had something real. Most people spend their lives chasing what you two had." I couldn't stop myself. The words tumbled out. "Then why'd she throw it away?" Rachel looked at me for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she sighed. "Honestly, I think she got scared. Of being happy. Of settling. She thought there was more out there. Adventure, maybe. Or someone more exciting." The words cut deeper than I expected, but I nodded. "Well, hope she finds what she's looking for." Rachel tilted her head. "And you? You looking for anything?" I wasn't sure if it was the way she asked, or the silence that followed, but something shifted in the room. She stepped past me, heading into the bedroom. I stayed in the living room, trying not to listen as she moved around, opening the closet, collecting items. But the walls were thin, and the quiet moments between rustling fabric and creaking hangers stretched longer than they should have. When she finally came back out, she had the suitcase in one hand and a folded sweatshirt in the other. She glanced down at it. "Her favorite one," she murmured. "Funny, she used to wear it when she missed you." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, jaw tight. Rachel set the sweatshirt on the counter. "You okay?" I shook my head, then chuckled bitterly. "I've been better." She hesitated, then did something unexpected. She stepped closer, just enough that I could smell the faint floral scent of her perfume. Her hand brushed my arm, not quite a caress, but enough to send a small spark crawling up my spine. "Jake, if you ever need to talk, really talk, I'm around." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in a long while. She wasn't just beautiful, she was present. Real. Not some distant echo of a woman who left. "Thanks," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She gave me a small smile, then picked up the suitcase and headed for the door. Just before she opened it, she paused. "By the way," she said without turning around, "that sweatshirt? Keep it. I don't think she'll be missing it." And then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. I stood there in the quiet, holding that sweatshirt in my hands like it was some relic from a life I no longer recognized. But my thoughts weren't on Emily anymore. They were on Rachel, on the way her fingers had grazed my arm, on the way she looked at me, like maybe I wasn't the broken one. The apartment still felt haunted. But now, maybe the ghosts weren't just hers. Rachel texted me a week later. Just a short message. "Want to grab a drink?" Just friends. I stared at it for a while before replying. Just friends. 2 words with so much space between them. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I didn't want to be alone that night. Yeah, just name the place. She picked a quiet wine bar downtown. Low lighting, soft music, small tables with flickering candles. It was the kind of place Emily used to love, and I half expected to feel the weight of memory crushing me when I walked in. But when I saw Rachel already seated at the bar, swirling a glass of red wine and wearing this low-cut black top that towed the line between casual and intentional, the weight eased. She smiled when she saw me, not too wide, but real. It was the kind of smile you give someone when you're glad they came. I almost thought you'd bail, she said, handing me a menu. Thought about it, I admitted, sliding onto the stool beside her. But the alternative was microwaved pizza and YouTube. She laughed, soft and throaty. Ah, the bachelor diet. How's that going for you? Fine. If sodium and sadness count as nutrients. She sipped her wine, her eyes crinkling at the corners. You're funnier than I remember. Maybe I'm just more bitter. That's where most humor comes from, right? We ordered a bottle of something she swore was decent and cheap. I didn't care. I wasn't there for the wine. Conversation flowed easier than I thought it would. We talked about our jobs, hers in PR, mine in tech marketing. We shared stories about mutual friends, about ridiculous office drama, about the time Emily nearly set the kitchen on fire trying to flambe bananas. She never told me that one, I said, smiling into my glass. She was so embarrassed. We still tease her about it. The mention of Emily should have soured the mood, but it didn't. Not with Rachel. She had this way of easing into heavy subjects like they were just part of the furniture, acknowledged, accepted, but not worshipped. Do you miss her? She asked after our second glass, her tone casual but curious. I stared at the deep red swirl in my glass. Every day, but not the version of her who left. I miss who she used to be. Rachel nodded slowly. I get that. You ever miss someone and realize they weren't even real? Just the idea of them. All the time, she said, eyes lingering on mine. That's why I don't do long-term anymore. We talked for hours. The wine turned our words loose, unfiltered. I told her things I hadn't said aloud to anyone. About the nights I stayed up hoping for a text. About how the smell of Emily's perfume made me nauseous now. About how I didn't know if I was angry or just tired. She listened. Really listened. And somewhere in the middle of all that truth, we started laughing. At ourselves. At life. At how completely absurd it all was. Near midnight, the bar began to empty. The bartender gave us the subtle look that said, pay your tab or die here. Rachel pulled on her coat. I'll walk you home, she offered. Unless you'd rather Uber and avoid awkward silence. I smiled. I can handle awkward. The night was cool, the streets quiet. We walked side by side, our steps matching without effort. There was a rhythm to it, like a song we danced to before but had forgotten the lyrics. I forgot how nice it is to just talk, I said. Rachel glanced sideways. Not many people know how to anymore. They're too busy waiting for their turn to speak. Not you. No, she said, her voice soft. Not with you. We stopped at the entrance to my building. I looked at her, really looked at her, and she looked back. The air shifted. A charged moment stretched between us, thick with possibility. I had a good time, she said. Me too. For a moment, it felt like the world paused. Her eyes dipped to my lips and mine to hers. She leaned in slightly, just enough that I could smell her again, something floral and faintly spicy. My breath caught, and then she stepped back. Good night, Jake. Night, Rachel. She turned and walked away, heels clicking against the sidewalk, fading into the night. I stood there long after she was gone, staring down the street, feeling something stir in me that I hadn't felt in a long time. Not just attraction, though that was undeniably there, but something deeper. Something hopeful. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was the first time I remembered what it felt like to want again. And that scared me more than anything. I kept replaying that night in my head, the walk, the wine, the silence at the door. The way Rachel had leaned in, just enough. The way we hadn't kissed. And how badly I wanted to. For days after, I found myself glancing at my phone, wondering if I should text her. But I didn't want to seem needy. I told myself I was being respectful of boundaries, whatever those were anymore. Then, on a rainy Thursday, she showed up again. No text, no warning, just a knock on my apartment door, soft but insistent. When I opened it, she was standing there in a long gray coat, damp from the rain, her hair clinging slightly to her cheeks. Her eyes were darker tonight, mascara smudged ever so slightly, and her lips, bare, a little bitten, held a hesitation that made my heart stumble. Hi, she said. I was nearby. Thought I'd see if you were home. I stepped aside wordlessly, letting her in. She unwrapped her scarf and toed off her heels. Underneath the coat was a simple black dress, form-fitting, understated, and maddeningly perfect. Want some tea? I asked, heading toward the kitchen to give myself a task, something to anchor me. Sure. We moved around each other like we'd rehearsed it. I handed her a mug, and we sat side by side on the couch, legs barely touching. The hum of the rain outside filled the silence. I was going to text you, I said after a minute. But you didn't, she finished, looking over at me with a small smile. I wasn't sure if it would cross a line. Rachel tucked her legs underneath her, turning to face me more fully. And if it did, I swallowed. Then I guess I wanted to cross it. The tension thickened. She set her mug down, eyes never leaving mine. I lied the other night, she said. About what? She breathed in slowly. I said I don't do long-term anymore. But that's not entirely true. I just stopped believing in it. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My pulse was in my ears, my chest tight. Emily told me once, Rachel continued, that being with you felt like being seen. Completely. Even when she didn't deserve it. That's generous, I said. She never really saw you, Jake. Not the way I do. I turned toward her, heart thudding. Her fingers moved gently to mine. Light, tentative. Our hands touched, her thumb brushing the edge of my palm. It felt electric. I don't know what this is, she said. I don't even know what I want it to be. But I couldn't stop thinking about you. And I don't want to keep pretending that I don't feel something. Her voice trembled near the end. But her eyes, God, her eyes, were steady. I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Her skin was soft and warm beneath my fingers. Then stopped pretending. And then I kissed her. It wasn't frantic or wild. It wasn't some Hollywood explosion of passion. It was slow, deliberate, and deeply honest. Her lips met mine with a quiet hunger, as if we both understood that this kiss was more than a moment. It was a shift. She leaned into me, her hand sliding to my neck, pulling me closer. I felt her sigh against my mouth, a sound that wasn't just desire, but release. We didn't rush it. We explored each other with lips and fingertips, with the reverence of people discovering something long forgotten. When we finally pulled back, breathless and flushed, she rested her forehead against mine. No regrets, she whispered. I shook my head. None. We didn't sleep together that night. Not in the way you might expect. She stayed, though, curled up against me on the couch, her head on my chest, my arm around her shoulders. We talked in the dark. Not about Emily. Not about what this meant. We just talked. About childhood fears and favorite songs. About the cities we wanted to visit. About the last time we cried. I learned that Rachel once wanted to be a travel writer. That she hates olives, but loves martinis. That she dreams in color and used to sleepwalk as a kid. And she learned that I still keep all my passwords in a notebook like a paranoid grandpa. That I can't cook rice to save my life. That I once cried during a Pixar movie and blamed it on allergies. At some point, we fell asleep like that. Tangled, warm, safe. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was barely rising, casting a soft orange glow across the room. Rachel was still asleep, her breathing slow and even, her hand curled lightly over my chest. I didn't move. I just lay there, heart full of something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Possibility. The shift wasn't subtle, it was seismic. After that kiss, after that night on the couch, Rachel and I were no longer orbiting around each other. We'd crossed into something raw, tender, undeniably real. The kind of closeness you feel in the dark, with nothing but breath and skin to tell you you're still alive. She started coming over more often. Sometimes she'd bring takeout, sometimes just wine and a look in her eyes that made my pulse quicken. And sometimes she'd bring nothing at all, just herself, and that was more than enough. We never talked about what we were doing. There was no label, no rules. It was like both of us had silently agreed to let this be whatever it was, for as long as it could be. But it didn't stay innocent for long. The first time we had sex wasn't planned. We weren't tipsy, we weren't celebrating anything. It was a lazy Sunday. She was over in yoga pants and a loose hoodie, barefoot, her hair tied up messily. We were on the floor playing cards. Stupid, childish games like War and Go Fish. She laughed at something I said, and I looked up at her, and suddenly we weren't playing anymore. Her laughter faded as our eyes locked. There was heat there, yes, but also this nervous anticipation, like we were standing at the edge of something huge. I leaned forward slowly, testing the moment. She met me halfway. The kiss deepened instantly. Her fingers tangled in my shirt, mine in her hair. I felt the way her body leaned into mine, the way she breathed differently when I touched her. And then she whispered against my mouth, "Jake, let me stay tonight." That was all I needed. We stumbled into the bedroom, clumsy with urgency. Our clothes fell away like they were made of paper. I hadn't seen her like this before, naked, yes, but more than that, open, unguarded. Her eyes never left mine, even as we sank into the bed. The first time was slow, almost reverent. We explored each other like a language we were just learning to speak. She gasped when I touched her just right, bit her lip when I teased her longer than expected. She whispered my name like it meant something. When she came, it wasn't loud. It was a breath, a tremble, a moment that cracked something open between us. We didn't stop there. The second time was rougher, needier. Her fingers dug into my back, her thighs wrapped tight around me as she pulled me deeper. There was nothing hesitant in the way she moaned, or the way she whispered dirty encouragements that made me lose control. She liked being watched, I learned. Liked when I stayed above her, eyes locked on hers while I thrust harder, deeper. She told me to keep looking at her. She wanted to see everything I felt, and I gave it to her. Afterward, we lay there in a mess of tangled sheets, our bodies slick with sweat, her leg draped over mine. She traced circles on my chest with her fingertips. "I forgot what it felt like," she said softly. "What?" "To feel wanted. Like this." I turned toward her. "You're more than wanted, Rachel." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she pressed her lips to my shoulder and held me tighter. We kept it secret, not because we were ashamed, but because we knew it wasn't time to explain it yet. Emily was still gone. No one had asked questions, but we both knew what people would assume if they found out too soon. That Rachel was just a rebound. That she swooped in the moment Emily left. That it was some twisted act of revenge. But it wasn't. It wasn't revenge. It was refuge. That week, we fell into a rhythm. She'd come over after work. Sometimes we'd cook. Sometimes we wouldn't even make it to the kitchen. The sex was always different, sometimes slow, sometimes greedy, sometimes so quietly intense it felt sacred. And it wasn't just the physical. We started learning the details of each other in the quiet hours. She liked to sleep with her feet tucked under the blanket and her hand on my stomach. She hummed when she was deep in thought. She always needed a glass of water before bed but never finished it. One night, after another round that left us breathless and tangled, she said something I wasn't ready for. "I don't want to just be a secret." I turned to her, my fingers brushing her cheek. "You're not. Not to me." She nodded, but her eyes held something fragile. "I just don't want to be the girl who fucked her best friend's husband." "You're not that girl," I said firmly. But we both knew it wasn't that simple. Still, I couldn't stop. I didn't want to. One night, as I lay in bed alone, Rachel out of town for a weekend with her sister, I found myself thinking not about the past, but about what could be. Not just the sex, not just the stolen hours, but something real, something lasting. And for the first time since Emily walked out that door, I felt it. Hope. It started with a text I wasn't expecting. "Emily, landing tomorrow night. Can we talk?" There was no apology, no "miss you," no hint of the turmoil she'd left behind. Just 5 bland words from the woman who had walked out of our life to find herself. I stared at the message for a full minute before locking the screen and setting the phone face down. Rachel was in the kitchen, wearing one of my shirts, long enough to cover just enough, short enough to drive me insane. She was humming to herself, barefoot, pouring wine. It was something domestic, casual, intimate. Something that used to belong to Emily, but now felt more honest in Rachel's hands. She turned and caught the look on my face. "What is it?" she asked. I hesitated. "Emily's coming back." The hum stopped. Her hand tightened slightly on the wine glass. "Did she say why?" "She wants to talk." Rachel set the glass down slowly, then leaned against the counter. "Are you going to?" "I don't know." She didn't answer right away. Just nodded. "Okay. You okay?" I asked. Rachel gave a small laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't expecting this. She was always the type to make a dramatic exit, then float back and like nothing happened. She doesn't know about us. Rachel met my gaze. "Are you going to tell her?" I opened my mouth, closed it, then ran a hand through my hair. "I haven't figured that part out yet." She walked over to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "I'm not asking you to choose. Not yet. But I won't pretend this doesn't change things." I kissed her forehead. "I know. And I'm not going anywhere." But the truth was, I felt the shift, like a sudden draft through a warm room. Emily arrived the next evening, glowing with that sun-drenched, spiritually renewed kind of beauty you only get from yoga retreats and zero accountability. Her skin was bronzed, her hair lighter, her smile too polished to be sincere. She knocked like it was her apartment, like nothing had changed. When I opened the door, she launched into a hug before I could even think. Her arms wrapped around me tightly, her body pressing close. It felt familiar, but it didn't feel right. God, I missed you, she said into my shoulder. I didn't hug her back. She pulled away, her smile faltering. I thought you'd be happier to see me. I didn't know I was supposed to be, I said quietly. She exhaled and stepped past me into the apartment. Still smells the same in here. I watched her look around like a tourist returning to a favorite hotel. She noticed the blanket on the couch, the wine glasses in the sink, the small things that screamed someone else has been here. But she didn't ask. Not yet. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began, sitting on the arm of the couch. Costa Rica changed me. The people, the space, the freedom. I needed that. But I also realized something important. I waited. I still love you, Jake. The words hit me like a brick wrapped in velvet. Heavy, soft, dangerous. She continued. I was scared. We'd fallen into this routine. Everything felt predictable. I didn't know who I was anymore. But being away, I realized the only time I felt whole was when I thought about coming back to you. I didn't answer. I want to make things right, she said. Start fresh. Rebuild. Together. For a second, I felt that old ache. The one that used to live in my chest every time she smiled at me, every time she whispered my name in bed. But it was distant now. Muted. Like a song playing from a room down the hall. I don't know if it's that simple, I said. She tilted her head. Have you met someone? The question was too sharp. Too fast. I didn't answer. She stood up. Jake, please tell me you haven't. And just like that, I saw it, the truth buried behind her spiritual glow and carefully curated emotional growth. She hadn't come back because she missed me. She'd come back because she expected me to be waiting. I didn't plan for anything, I said slowly. But I wasn't going to put my life on hold while you figured yours out. She looked away. So it's Rachel. I froze. How did you? She's my best friend, Jake. You think I didn't feel something the second I walked in? Her scent still in the sheets. Silence stretched between us. So you moved on, she said, voice flat. With her of all people. No, I said. I didn't move on. I moved through. Emily flinched. I waited, I added. I hoped. But you didn't call. You didn't ask. You just left. And when Rachel showed up, she didn't try to save me, she just saw me. And I saw her. Her lip trembled. So that's it. I don't know, I said honestly. But it's not the same. We're not the same. She stood in silence for a long time, then finally nodded. I need to pick up some of my things. They're in the closet, I said. She walked toward the bedroom, her footsteps soft, her presence ghostly. And for the first time since she left, I didn't feel like a man waiting for someone to come home. I felt like a man watching someone leave again. And this time, I wasn't breaking. There's something uniquely cruel about being wanted by two people, but truly understood by only one. Emily didn't leave quietly. After collecting some of her clothes and a box of books, she started texting again. Not angry texts. Not desperate ones. Sweet, measured messages with carefully constructed warmth. Hey, I found that old Polaroid of us at the lake. Made me smile. I miss that version of us. I still have your old hoodie. I sleep in it sometimes. Hope that's okay. Can we grab coffee? No pressure. Just talk. I didn't respond to most. When I did, it was polite, controlled. But inside, I was twisting. Because with every memory she referenced, with every breadcrumb of our shared past, she pulled at something buried in me. Nostalgia's a funny thing. It doesn't care how much you've healed. It just wants to remind you what it used to feel like. Rachel, meanwhile, had gone quiet. Not entirely, she still showed up. Still curled beside me at night, still laughed at my terrible jokes. But I could feel it. The distance. The uncertainty. The fear that she was just a warm body keeping my bed from going cold. One night, after dinner, I caught her staring out the window, her wine untouched. Penny for your thoughts? I asked. She didn't look at me. She's not done. You know that, right? Who? Emily. I sighed. Rachel, She's trying to worm her way back in. And you're letting her. I moved to sit beside her. I'm not. I haven't seen her since she came for her stuff. That's not the point, Rachel said, finally turning to face me. The point is, she's haunting this place again. You're caught between what was and what is, and I'm the one who's stuck in the middle. I never asked you to be, I said, more defensive than I meant. She flinched. Well, I didn't mean, Rachel. I trailed off, exhaling. I'm trying to make sense of all this. I didn't plan for any of it. I know, she said, voice softer. But it's hard not to feel like I'm just a detour on your way back to her. You're not. Then what am I? I looked at her. Really looked. The tension in her shoulders, the sadness creeping into the corners of her mouth, the naked vulnerability she rarely allowed herself to show. You're the person who helped me remember what it felt like to be seen. Not managed. Not tolerated. Seen. She blinked rapidly, then nodded. Okay. But I could tell it wasn't okay. The next day, Emily showed up at my office. She was wearing that familiar ivory sweater, the one she used to pair with nothing underneath on lazy Saturdays. She leaned against the doorway like she belonged there, like nothing had changed. Got a minute? She asked, eyes bright. I gestured for her to come in, already regretting it. She sat, crossing her legs. I know this is awkward, but I just wanted to say. I get it now. Get what? What I did to you. How I made you feel. I thought space would help me find myself, but all it did was show me how much I lost when I walked away. I swallowed hard. Emily. She leaned in. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm just asking for a second chance. We built something real. That doesn't just disappear. No, it doesn't, I said. But maybe it was real because we wanted it to be. Not because it still was. Her eyes searched mine. So, is that it? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. That night, Rachel didn't come over. She said she had a thing with work, a late event she had to help coordinate. But I knew better. I felt it in my bones. I sat alone on the couch, wine in hand, replaying every word I'd said and didn't say. Every moment with Emily, every silent hour with Rachel. And I hated how torn I felt. Because part of me still grieved for the life I had with Emily, for the dreams we'd built. But the other part, the part that had started to bloom in the darkness, was terrified I was letting go of something real with Rachel before I'd even grasped how much she meant to me. The next day, I stopped by Rachel's office. She was mid-call but waved me in. Her eyes flickered with surprise, maybe even hope. When she hung up, I didn't wait. I need to talk. She crossed her arms, guarded. Okay. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I said. But I know I don't want to do it without you. She looked down, then back up. Jake. No games. No more waiting. I need you to know you're not a rebound. You're not some phase. You're the one who stayed when it all fell apart. Her eyes shimmered, but her voice stayed even. And yet, you still haven't told her. I'm going to. When? Soon. She nodded. Okay. But know this, every day you don't choose, that's still a choice. I left feeling like the floor beneath me was shifting. Emily was sweet, nostalgic, familiar. Rachel was messy, passionate, real. And I was right in the middle, pulled in both directions, knowing I couldn't stand still much longer. The tug of war wasn't just between them. It was between who I used to be and who I might become. Emily found the earring on a Tuesday. I had been careless, too comfortable. Rachel had left it behind the last night she stayed over, a small gold hoop that glinted like gilt beneath the nightstand. I hadn't noticed it, but Emily did. She had stopped by unannounced. Claimed she wanted to drop off a few things she borrowed from a mutual friend. But I knew better. She was fishing, testing boundaries, seeing how much of her old world still fit. And then I heard her voice from the bedroom. Jake. I walked down the hallway slowly, stomach tight. She was kneeling on the floor beside the bed, holding the earring between her fingers like it was a shard of glass. This isn't mine, she said quietly. I said nothing. She stood, turned to face me, her expression unreadable. How long? I stayed still, choosing my words carefully. A while. Her nostrils flared, but her voice remained low. Who is she? I hesitated. Jake, she snapped. Who the hell is she? I looked her in the eye. Rachel. The silence that followed was deafening. She laughed sharp, bitter. Of course it's Rachel. My best friend. The one who always looked at you a little too long when she thought I wasn't watching. It didn't start like that. Oh, spare me, she said, stepping forward, her face contorting. How long after I left did you crawl into her bed? She came over to grab some of your things. Oh, so this is my fault? My God, you're unbelievable. I exhaled, forcing calm into my voice. You're the one who asked for space. You're the one who walked away. Not so you could screw my best friend, she shouted. It wasn't about sex, I said sharply. And don't reduce her to that. Or me. Emily looked stunned for a second, then her expression darkened. She always wanted what I had. I see that now. She waited until I was gone. Like a fucking vulture. The front door opened. We both turned at the same time. Rachel stood there, holding a bag of takeout, her eyes locking instantly onto Emily's. She froze. Emily's eyes narrowed. Wow. Perfect timing. Rachel set the bag down slowly, her face pale but composed. I didn't know you'd be here. No kidding, Emily said, stepping toward her. Tell me, how long were you waiting? Weeks? Months? Or were you eyeing him the whole time we were married? Rachel blinked once, then straightened. I didn't plan this, Emily. And you know that. Oh, do I? Rachel moved closer, her voice steady. You left. You didn't call, didn't check in. You just left. And Jake, he was broken. I didn't steal anything from you. You abandoned it. Emily's mouth tightened. How dare you? No, Rachel said, louder now. You don't get to be the victim. Not after you bailed on your marriage and expected him to sit here waiting for you like a damn houseplant. Emily's voice trembled. You betrayed me. Rachel nodded. Maybe I did, but at least I stayed. Silence. Tense, suffocating. Emily turned to me. You're really going to choose her? After everything we had? I didn't answer. Not yet. Rachel stepped back. You don't have to do this now, she said softly to me. But Emily wasn't done. You two think this is love? It's not. It's proximity. Loneliness. Guilt. You're a fucking rebound, Rachel. Rachel stiffened. I stepped forward. Enough. Emily looked at me, shocked. You came back expecting nothing to have changed, I said. But it has. I have. And the only person who really saw that was Rachel. She shook her head, tears brimming. You don't mean that. I do. And I did. Every word. Rachel stepped beside me, not touching, just standing close enough to say, I'm here. Emily stared at us, then slowly turned, picked up her bag, and walked to the door. Before leaving, she looked back, one last time. Someday, you'll regret this. She closed the door behind her. Rachel and I stood there in silence. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound between us. She turned to me, eyes wide, voice barely a whisper. Was that the right thing? I reached for her hand. It was the honest thing. She smiled, a little. Just enough. Later, we sat on the couch. No words. Just her head on my shoulder, her fingers tracing slow circles on my arm. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt raw, but also free. Not from Emily. From the person I used to be. And the man I was becoming? He had nothing left to hide. The fallout was immediate. Emily didn't slink away quietly into the night. That wasn't her style. No, she lit every fuse she could find before the door even cooled behind her. It started with the texts. First to me. You'll see what she really is. Sooner or later. Then to Rachel. You disgust me. You were supposed to be my friend. And finally, a group message to a handful of mutual friends, a carefully worded tirade cloaked in heartbreak, painting Rachel as a betrayer and me as a weak man led by lust and loneliness. Within 48 hours, the emotional grenade had exploded across our social circle. Half the people we knew stopped replying to my texts. The other half reached out awkwardly, cautiously, testing the water, trying to gauge whose side they were supposed to be on. Rachel took it better than I expected. She didn't rage. She didn't collapse. But I could see it in the way her jaw clenched when her phone buzzed. In the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. I knew she'd do this, she said, reading through another vicious message. I just didn't think she'd be so calculated. She's hurt, I offered weakly. Rachel gave me a look. Yeah? So was I. So were you. Doesn't mean we set fire to everything. She was right. But it didn't change the fact that Emily had set the narrative and Rachel was cast as the villain. One night, after another strained dinner filled with too long silences and half-hearted jokes, Rachel finally broke the stillness. I need to ask you something, she said. Okay. If she hadn't left, if she hadn't taken her little spiritual sabbatical, would we have ever happened? The question hit harder than I expected. I wanted to lie. To give her the comfort of some clean, noble origin story. But Rachel wasn't the kind of woman you protected with sweetened lies. She wanted the truth, even if it stung. I don't know, I said. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't look away. I never looked at you like that before, I continued. Not because I wasn't attracted, but because you were Emily's. Off limits. Sacred, in a way. But after she left, and you showed up, really showed up. I saw you. I mean, truly saw you. And I couldn't not. Rachel exhaled. So I was convenient. No, I said quickly. You were inevitable. That made her pause. She blinked, like she was holding something back. Then, quietly, I've loved you for a long time, Jake. My heart stopped. She gave a sad smile. I never said it. Never planned to. I figured you were off limits too. But I knew. God, I knew. Every time she forgot your birthday or canceled plans or made you feel like a burden, I knew. I wanted to shake her. To scream, do you even realize what you have? But I didn't. Because it wasn't my place. She looked down at her hands. And then she left. And suddenly, it was my place. And I didn't know what to do with that. I reached for her hand, laced my fingers through hers. You were never just a rebound. She looked up, eyes glassy. But I always feared I was. I pulled her into me, held her against my chest. Her body trembled, anger, relief, sadness. I couldn't tell. I know who you are, Rachel, I whispered. You didn't steal me. You saved me. The next weekend, I ran into Emily at a grocery store. She was dressed immaculately, heels, lipstick, sunglasses. Too polished for a quick milk and eggs run. She saw me near the produce section and paused, plastic basket in hand. Jake, she said coolly. Emily. A beat passed. You look well, she said, eyes scanning me for signs of regret. You too. More silence. She sighed. Is it serious? With her. Yes. That word, simple, sharp, seemed to hit harder than anything else I could have said. Wow, she muttered. You really traded down. My jaw tightened. You don't know her. I knew enough. No, I said, stepping closer, voice quiet but firm. You never knew her. Just like you never really knew me. You were so busy trying to fix whatever wasn't broken, you didn't notice what was falling apart. She looked like she wanted to say something vicious, but the fire behind her eyes flickered out. Instead, she just nodded, slowly. Good luck, Jake. You too. That night, I told Rachel about the encounter. She listened without flinching. Did she try to win you back? She didn't have to. Rachel raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I smiled. I'd already made my choice. She leaned in, kissed me slow, deep, final. Not final as in the end. Final as in decided. There's a quiet kind of clarity that comes after chaos. Not like a sunrise, more like fog lifting slowly from the street, revealing what's always been there, just hidden. That's what it felt like waking up next to Rachel each morning now. No guilt, no confusion, just breath, skin, and certainty. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. We still had hard days. Awkward run-ins with mutual friends who didn't know what to say. Passive-aggressive comments from people who didn't approve. But Rachel handled it like she handled everything with grit and grace. I admired her more than I ever had anyone in my life. But I hadn't told her that yet. Not the way I needed to. One Saturday morning, we were sitting on the balcony of my apartment. Our apartment now. Really. She was in one of my hoodies, legs curled under her, sipping coffee from a mug she'd claimed as hers months ago. The city buzzed below us, alive but distant. We were in our own little world. She looked up from her cup. You're quiet today. I've been thinking. Dangerous, she teased, her lips curving. I smiled, then leaned forward, elbows on my knees. About us. About what we've been through. Her smile faded into something softer. I realized something, I continued. When Emily left, I didn't just lose her. I lost a version of myself. The man I was with her, the one always accommodating, always adapting, I don't miss him. Not really. Because I was shrinking in that relationship. I just didn't know it. Rachel said nothing, just watched me. You were the first person who didn't make me feel like I needed to apologize for who I am. You just saw me. And you stayed. She blinked quickly, like she was trying to keep something in. I want to be that man who chooses what's real, I said. Not what's familiar. Not what's easy. What's real. And Rachel, you're real. She set her coffee down, crawled into my lap, her knees framing my hips. I didn't know if you'd say it, she whispered. But I hoped. I wrapped my arms around her. I choose you. Every time. Even if the world doesn't understand it. She kissed me then, long, deep, anchoring. A kiss that tasted like certainty. That afternoon, I sat down to write Emily a letter. Not because I owed her anything, but because I needed to close the book properly. Emily, I'm writing this not to reopen old wounds, but to leave things where they belong with honesty. We had a life together. We loved. We struggled. And in the end, we fell apart. I don't blame you for needing space. I don't even blame you for leaving. Sometimes people grow in directions that don't match anymore. But I need you to know, I'm not lost. I didn't fall into someone's arms because I was weak or lonely. I found someone who met me in the wreckage and said, "You're not broken. You're just beginning again. I don't hate you. I just don't miss who I was when I was with you. Take care of yourself. Jake." I never knew if she read it. She never responded. And that was fine. Some endings don't need applause. A few weeks later, Rachel and I visited a small coastal town for the weekend. Nothing fancy. Just a cottage rental, sea air, and no schedule. We walked barefoot in the sand, ate overpriced seafood, and played board games on the porch while rain danced on the roof. One night, as we sat by a fire pit behind the cottage, Rachel looked at me across the flames. "Do you think we'll always feel like this?" she asked. I reached for her hand. "No." Her eyes widened slightly. "But that's not a bad thing," I continued. The newness, the intensity, it'll evolve. And when it does, I don't want to chase what we were. I want to build what we can be." She exhaled, then smiled. "That's the most grown-up thing you've ever said." I grinned. "I have my moments." We fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't need filling. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I kissed her hair. And in that moment, I didn't feel like I was escaping the past anymore. I felt like I was finally, truly, home. It was raining again the morning Emily came to collect the last of her things. She hadn't texted, hadn't called, just showed up. Maybe she thought I'd be at work. Maybe she wanted to avoid seeing me altogether. But the universe, with its twisted sense of timing, had other plans. Rachel was in the kitchen, barefoot in one of my shirts, humming softly as she poured coffee into a mug. Emily's mug. It had been hers, once. A big teal ceramic thing with a chip on the handle and the words, "But first, coffee," printed in bold white letters. She used to guard it like it was sacred. After she left, I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Rachel had found it one morning and laughed. "This one's dramatic. I like it." She started using it regularly. Eventually, it just became hers. I didn't think twice about it. Until Emily walked in and saw her holding it. Her expression froze mid-step, like someone hit pause. She stood there, soaked from the rain, keys in hand, eyes glued to the scene, Rachel in her mug, her shirt, in our kitchen. "Wow," Emily said, voice flat. "Really leaning into the replacement fantasy, huh?" Rachel didn't flinch. She just took a sip, then smiled. "Coffee's excellent this morning." Emily's eyes darted to me, then back to Rachel. "I'll be quick." "You don't have to talk to me," I said, keeping my tone even. "Just say what you came to say, grab what you need, and go." She walked past us, her posture stiff, her breath audible. I could hear her rifling through the hallway closet, dragging boxes across the floor. Rachel walked over to me, her fingers brushing mine as she leaned in. "Want me to step out?" "No," I said quietly. "This is your place too." She nodded once, then leaned her head on my shoulder. Emily came back a few minutes later, dragging a plastic bin, face flushed with exertion and something else. Her eyes flicked to Rachel again. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closed it. But the silence was loud. "Is that everything?" I asked. Emily nodded. "Yeah." She hesitated by the door, one hand on the knob. Then, softly, "I didn't think you'd change this much." "I didn't either," I said. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Maybe that was the point. "You look happy," she said finally. "I am." Emily gave a small, sad smile. She better not screw it up. She won't. This time, she didn't look back. Later, as the rain continued to fall and the apartment grew still again, I found Rachel standing by the window, sipping her coffee. That damn teal mug still in her hand. "She hates that I use this," she said. "She hated a lot of things," I replied. Rachel looked at the cup, then slowly turned it in her hands. "Maybe I should stop." "No," I said. "Keep it." "Why?" "Because you're not replacing her. You're rewriting what this place means." She walked over, set the mug on the counter, and kissed me, slow, certain, and full of that finality you feel when you know. I pulled her close. "I've never been more sure of anything." She smiled. "Good. Because I wasn't sure of you at first." "I don't blame you." Rachel reached up, her fingers grazing my cheek. "But now I am. And I'm not going anywhere." Neither was I. Weeks passed. Then months. And slowly, the air in our apartment changed. Laughter returned. Music played on Sunday mornings. The bed felt full again, warm, lived in, real. Friends trickled back into our lives. Some didn't. That was okay. One morning, I found Rachel standing by the kitchen sink, staring into that same mug again. She turned, held it up, and said, "I'm going to keep this forever." As a reminder. Of her. I teased. "No," she said. "Of us." And where it started. She walked over, handed it to me. Inside the rim, someone had scratched a message, so faint it was barely visible. "Don't wait to be seen." Rachel winked. "Found it yesterday. Guess it was always meant for me." I laughed. "You never needed a message to be seen." She leaned into me, her hands at my chest. "No," she whispered. "But I needed you." I kissed her. Not to erase the past, but to honor what came after it. That mug still sits in our kitchen today. And every time I see it, I don't think of Emily. I think of the woman who showed up when everything fell apart. The one who saw me. And stayed.